for today is Hebrews 11 and 13 and 14. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, were assured of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For those who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland. All right. I want to introduce our speaker here today, Scott. There he is. Scott, from our conference office. We're just happy to have you today, and we welcome your message. The time is yours.
Thank you, Jeff. See if I can get this thing turned on. Am I on now? Hello? Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, Brian. That was a beautiful song, ladies. Thank you for sharing that. Some of you I know, some of you I don't. So I'll, I guess, introduce myself a little bit more. I am working at the conference office now. I've been in this conference since 2000, running the MagaBook program then, and some people think you don't look old enough. Well, it is what it is. I can't change that. So I'm very happy today to have my 3 sons in the back. It's only a few times a year that we all get to go to church together, so it makes it special when that happens. So parents with young kids, enjoy it now, because going to church together with your little kids every week it does have an expiration. So enjoy that. So, and actually, I'm going to have the older boys talk a little bit about Sunnydale in a minute. I have a couple different responsibilities, and I figure each one is worthy of 30 minutes, so settle in. Actually, I'll spare you most of that. But I do want to talk a little bit about trust services. That's one of my titles, one of my hats. And how many of you have a will or a trust? Why don't you just raise your hand? I'd like to kind of have an idea. Okay, a lot of you. If you do, and if you haven't looked at it recently, I encourage you to do so, because sometimes situations in life change and you realize, oh, I didn't realize I had it written like this. I guess I should change that. So I encourage you to do that. If you don't have a will or a trust, I encourage you to get one, especially if you've got kids. And I myself, our situation has changed and I need to update mine. The government has a cookie cutter approach. If you don't have a will, it's the same for everybody. And that cookie cutter may not be what you want. And it's probably not. And especially if you have any intention to give anything to God's work, if it's 5%, 10%, 25%, whatever you might leave to God's work, the judge won't do that for sure. So I encourage people in their end-of-life planning, remember God's work. He's given you everything that you've had. He's helped you with all of that. So I encourage you to remember God in your estate planning too. Okay, so that's 30 minutes done in 2. We're doing pretty good so far. So, and then the other thing I want to talk about is Sunnydale. The part of a new hat that the conference has is development director for the conference, and especially to be helping Sunnydale Academy. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, and then we're going to show a video, and then since my sons are alumnus, I asked them if they would share a little bit about how Sunnydale has impacted them personally. I like to take Sunnydale students, current students, but hey, I guess my boys are next best thing. So, you might know that it costs a lot of money to go to Sunnydale. And there's always been a need to help, and some in this church have helped. And I want you to know I appreciate that. I'm going to share the need, I guess, at the end. Let's just go with the video now.
because many of them said we would never bring our own kids here. We've never even thought of bringing our own kids out to these remote areas to witness to these tribal people. And so when I hear that, I'm just so proud of our Sunnydale students and the level of sacrifice that they're willing to endure to spread the gospel. Hello, my name is Mike Needles. I'm the cross-training director at Sunnydale Academy. Cross-training is our evangelism program. Part of that program, we get to take our kids all around the world and have them talk about God, explain who God is and how much He loves us. And I am just so excited about what God is doing here in India. India is predominantly a Hindu country, and the Hindu people worship many gods, but they really have no conception of one creator God. When Sunnydale first started coming to India, they realized there was a real need. And that need was simply to go to where other people are not going. Our students are going and preaching in remote areas. Our kids are sleeping in tents, they're eating local food. And so part of the mission statement that Sunnydale has accepted as their own is to go where others are not going. For example, last year we were in a part of Telangana, India, and the local pastors that came to function as translators for us, they were so shocked that we brought our young people to that part of India because many of them said we would never bring our own kids here. And so when I hear that, I'm just so proud of our Sunnydale students and the level of sacrifice that they're willing to endure to spread the gospel. So as Sunnydale continued to come to the Sundarban Islands, the church family grew. When we first started coming to the Sundarbans, there was less than 100 church members in that part of the islands. Now there's well over 10,000. At one site, at Mary Fisk's site, she was preaching to a group of people who at first were very hesitant to hold meetings. In fact, the village elders said, we will give you a couple nights. If we're not happy with your meetings, we'll ask you to leave. And so the second night came around, one of the local ladies overheard the village elder talking about these people need to go somewhere else. And she intervened and she says, no, let them have one more night. And so last night Mary went back and it rained. She still went, she still shared her message, and out of that message, the village chief had a change of heart. He came up to the Bible worker and he said, I've changed my mind. I really want you to continue. I really want these meetings to be held right here at my home. The pastor then continued to hold a 2-hour Bible study with the chief, sharing biblical principles about who God is. So those types of miracles, they happen. God is working in front of us, and behind us, all around us to make sure that these meetings happen. All of us that we believe in become the first and most common way is they're shocked. But then they start to realize that people are making decisions for the kingdom. People are giving their hearts to Christ and they want to be in heaven, and that is powerful to a young person. Most years when we go home, we have 3 or 4 baptisms of our students. Our students come here to minister and to witness to the Indian people, and inevitably they end up giving their own hearts to Christ in a real practical way.
Okay, what do you think? Think something good's happening? Yeah, good stuff is happening. And I had an idea, a desire to have mission video about India with actual footage from India. All we'd had was pictures. We never had videos. So I asked Caleb, my oldest son, would you give up your time from college and go with our group to India and actually take some footage, because Caleb's been making videos. So that was his video that he had put together for us. So the first time he got to see it actually played in a church, I bet. No? Okay. In this church. Okay. So I asked them to share. You guys come up, or one of you, whoever's going first. I think it's better to hear directly from them than just from Dad or talking about other kids.
Good morning. I won't talk long. My name's Caleb, and we're his sons. I did get to go to India a couple times. I'll just tell you a little bit about my experiences and the positive experience that Sunnydale has had on me. I'm sure you guys have been able to hear that before, but it's different for every student, and Sunnydale makes different impacts on every individual student. When I went to Sunnydale, I knew of the mission programs, I knew of all the mission trips, but back then, traveling and going other places was not something that interested me at all. I was like, why would people pay money to go other places in the world when they could experience similar things without spending that money just from home? Like I didn't understand it. And then my sophomore year, I got to go to India for the first time, and it all just like, I just remember stepping off of the plane, getting in the first taxi in Calcutta, India, which is in one of the most densely populated cities in the world, and I was like, I'm in India. What is this? And it was my first time really experiencing that overseas experience, seeing that other people live differently. Not everybody is the same. It completely shattered my worldview. You hear of that happening, but I got to experience that. And ever since then, I've been involved in plenty of overseas mission trips and humanitarian aid projects overseas, and it's been something that has completely changed my life. And I now know that that's something that I want to do with the rest of my life. Since then, like this video here, I've gotten to do a lot of different photo and video work for different humanitarian and mission organizations all around the world, and it's led to incredible experiences understanding how God is working in different places. One of my favorite statistics from Sunnydale, from that video, was that when we started going to India, to those islands in India, there were only around 100 church members, and now there's over 10,000, which is incredible. Like, that's exponential increase of growth in the church that's there. But the exciting thing is, we always talk about Sunnydale's missions because that's something that sets us apart, and it's exciting, and it completely changes the mindset of students to understand that there's a need for Jesus everywhere. But that same change is happening at Sunnydale too. It's been a while, about 5 years since I've been at Sunnydale, but I still get to hear stories of students at Sunnydale through the staff members who are spiritual, helping the students along, and them being coached past difficult parts of their lives and realizing, like, hey, like, they didn't come from an Adventist family, but they want to make a decision for Jesus. So it is cool that Sunnydale hasn't changed in the aspect of that there are teachers that, yeah, they teach history, they teach science, they teach all of these things, but each one of them also has a passion for Jesus and teaching that to the students as well. And I'll let Ryan talk about some other stuff, but from my experience, what I've heard from other students, it's an incredible place and very unique to see the passion of missions and the Adventist church with an education experience and teachers who love the students and who can't wait to see them grow as well. So incredibly positive experience, and Ryan can say whatever I'm not.
Good morning. Can we make one of these work? I have a hard time standing still. There you go. All right, I'm Ryan, and I'm his son and their brother. And I also went to Sunnydale. And a couple of things that Caleb touched on is, one, Sunnydale is making a difference in the world. I mean, you talk about going from less than 100 members to over 10,000. Since Sunnydale's been going to that place in India, that's incredible. I went to that place in India 4 times, and a different place in India another time. And those trips were huge for me. And I'm also hearing a lot of really positive things from Sunnydale now that I've been graduated for 3 or 4 years. So I can't really speak so much as to what's happening now, but I can speak to what Sunnydale has started in my life. I'm actually one of the student missions coordinators at Union College. This last year, I spent the year in the Philippines as a student missionary, and that was a dream that started at Sunnydale. When I was at Sunnydale, I went on my first mission trip when I was 13, and I was like, I want this to be part of my life. And then I heard that at college, you can take a whole year as a missionary. I was like, whoa, I want to do that. And now as a student missions coordinator, I'm able to help the people who are out now. And right now, out of the student missionaries that Union College has sent out, 50% of them are from Sunnydale Academy. And Union is a school of around 800 students, a little over 800 students. And so Sunnydale does not make up 50% of the school, but 50% of our student missionaries are from Sunnydale Academy because of the impact that that's had on their life. And it's not just missions, like Caleb was saying. I still remember lots of the teachers that I felt really appreciated and loved by. And now looking back, thinking even more, oh, wow, I was really cared for by them. And I know that that's still going on today and that it makes huge difference in students' lives who go to Sunnydale. And the last thing I want to leave you guys with is the biggest lesson that I've learned both from Sunnydale and from my student missions year, and that is that it doesn't have to be overseas. Because students at Sunnydale have that incredible opportunity to go to India, to Africa, and to do all these awesome things and experience these incredible things. But students at Sunnydale also have opportunities to do things while they're there, to take part, lead out praise teams, to do Bible studies. My senior year, I led a Bible study every night in the dorm, and I had that opportunity. What public school would you have an opportunity, or even like another private school, would you have an opportunity to every single night meet with other students that you live with and meet and talk about God? And one of the coolest things from that was the year after I graduated, one of the guys that I did that Bible study in the dorm with ended up getting baptized. And that was huge. That was so awesome. And that was an opportunity provided by Sunnydale. So what I've learned is that, and this is not for Sunnydale students, this is for you guys. We are all missionaries. I've come to develop strong feelings about the term missionary. I think either we need to get rid of that or we need to call every Christian a missionary. Because just because you go, when I went to the Philippines for a year, I realized every single thing I'm doing here, I could be doing back in the States. I could be doing in my own culture where I speak the language, where I know the culture of the people around me, and I could be even more effective there. So it's easy for us to be in our churches and think that, oh, we're sending out these missionaries to the world and they're the missionaries. No, each one of you guys is a missionary. Each one of you is a missionary in your own context. And don't think that you have to let somebody else do the work for you. Because God has called all of us to live in the Spirit, to be filled with His Spirit to the point that we joyfully, we serve because it's our nature, because of what God puts into us. So I want to encourage all of you guys to ask God to put that Spirit in you, to where each one of us is naturally, every day, every minute, living to love and to serve others. And that's part of what Sunnydale taught me and instilled in me. And I've realized just over this last year, I'm realizing, God, I love what you're doing with my life. I love where you're bringing me with life. I'm excited for the future that you're giving me. And a lot of that started at Sunnydale, and I know that that is the case also for a lot of other students. So, yeah, that's kind of my testimony with that. I'll put this back.
Thank you, Caleb. Thank you, Ryan. And you might imagine that me as a dad appreciate Sunnydale too for the positive impact I've been able to see it's had on my own kids. I want to read one a post on Facebook, and then I'm going to close about Sunnydale. This is from a couple months ago. Staff told me about it. It says, 9 years ago I started Sunnydale. And I'm blessed I was able to graduate from this school and make even more friends that I will have everlasting relationships with. I thank all of the staff for their guidance, leadership, and wisdom. I didn't realize it then and thought they were being unfair at times, but through my years there, they planted the seed of God into me. I strayed from God's path one year, and they allowed me to return to school. I'm forever grateful for that. If they had not have done that, there's no telling where I would be now. I wandered well off the path of righteousness right out of high school, and for years and years after that, I finally come to God. So he's seeing the impact that Sunnydale had, even when he wasn't responding to it, is still bearing fruit later in life. And so you know that, many of you know that a lot of kids at Sunnydale can't afford it. Do you think it's a good thing what's happening at Sunnydale from what you're hearing? Do you think the school should keep on going? Should we have the school full or half full? What do you think? It'd be nice to have it full, full, right? It is full. 162 students, the highest enrollment in about almost 30 years. Since the late 80s, I think, or 1990. And it's full because a decision was made to say, do you know what? If the parents and the students want to come and they can't afford all of the full tuition, if they can afford even, if they can just give a fraction, we're going to let them in. And because we're like, why should we have empty seats? Let's fill these classrooms up and have a lot of kids learn. And so because of that, over 80% of the students are needing some help. Some of them are from refugee homes. It's not their fault that there was a war in their country. And they were Adventists there. They come to America. Here's an Adventist school. Yeah, of course they want to come. Families are getting messed up. And there are families with broken homes, single moms, grandparents raising kids. They never planned for that. But their kids want to be at Sunnydale and they're growing there. And I think we should support them. And so I want to encourage you to do that. And you can do that online. That's what I would suggest. I'm doing it. I'm paying tuition for my daughter there, and I'm giving, to help those who can't make it too. And I would encourage you to do the same. And I know some here are, and it's greatly, greatly appreciated. The amount of money we need is only about $800,000. So if someone wants to write a check, we probably need about $720 left for this current year. If someone writes me a check today, I won't appeal anymore for the rest of the year. Not again until July. Nobody here can do that, I bet. But if we can all chip in some, our whole constituency, this plan can still work. Academies are closing. Ours is doing something amazing. Let's keep it going. If you can give $20 a month, $25, $50, whatever, I encourage you to please, please do that because it all adds up. Go to sunnydale.org. On the top right, there's a donate tab. And if you would just mark the student assistance, there's a couple things you can donate to. Donate to anything you want, okay? What I'm talking about, though, is the student assistance. And if you just keep trickling some money in there, that's going to help us so that we can continue doing this good work. So thank you. Thank you. So, can I give a sermon still? Keep going. Okay. Okay, I know everyone gets super excited to hear a sermon on stewardship, right? Isn't that everyone's favorite subject? And it could be that I'll touch on everybody's other favorite subject before I'm done, and that's the judgment. This is sounding great, right? I think the perspective will be different from what you have normally heard, and others have said that it's been a blessing to them. I believe it will be a blessing to you too. But if people get hungry or whatever and need to go home before I'm done, that's okay. And I will try to keep it a little shorter than normal. So if we were in India, and that's where I've gone, the one that took my boys there, most of their trips that they went on, we would be arranged very differently than we are right now. We would have children here in the front, we would have the women behind them, and the men over here. Every single village I've ever been to where we've held a meeting to preach the gospel there, that's how it is. And it's just, everything's different in different places. When I've been to Beirut, Lebanon, I pastored there for a short time. Before I went up on the platform for the first time, one of the elders told me, make sure when you're up front and you're sitting down, don't cross your feet. So what do you think I did? We'd walk on the platform at the beginning. I like it here. I just walk up to preach. I like that better. But there I was up front the whole time. The whole time I'm not thinking about the music. I'm not thinking about anything that happens. I'm thinking about one thing. Scott, don't cross your legs. Because I do that all the time. And so I didn't. But I didn't notice anything else. But in their culture, if the heel of your foot is up, that's very offensive. And I want to be sensitive to their culture. So things are so different in different places. In India, I've personally had people beg me, fathers beg me to give them money so they could have a dowry to get their daughter married. Because they were so poor, they didn't have the money, and their daughter would never get married. And they wanted something better for their daughter. In Lebanon, I had a number of single men, and the Lebanese church is very small. And there were a number of single men in the audience that should be married, in my opinion. They were well into their 30s. It's fine to be single. I'm just thinking as a pastor, we at least need to have biological growth here. Because this church is not growing. At least we got to have that. And I was inside, I was kind of frustrated with these guys. So what's the problem? And then I sat down and talked with one. To get married, they needed at least $30,000 for a wedding. Here in America, if we have no money, basically, we can get married, right? To not have this huge show of a wedding. And they would rather go single than bring shame on their family. Cultures are so different. No matter where you go, cultures are so different. And this morning, I want us to consider culture in connection with biblical culture, in connection with stewardship, giving of our time, giving of our money, the things that we can only spend one time. How are we going to spend them? And I want us to look at the life of Abraham. So turn in your Bible with me to Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews chapter 11, and we're going to start with verse 8. Abraham's one of my heroes, and one of the reasons he's one of my heroes is the verses that we're going to look at right now. And it says in Hebrews 11:8, by faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. Excuse me. And he went out not knowing where he was going. Let's stop right there. How many of you, God tells you, I want you to move, you say where, and he says, I'll tell you later. How many of you are going to be excited to rent the U-Haul and start packing? Anyone? Most of us, we like to know where we're headed, right? But Abraham called the U-Haul, packed up everything, said goodbye to his friends, and he left to go to a place that he would inherit, trusting God that it would be someplace good. And so he left, which I think is amazing. And so let's go on. It says in verse 9, by faith, thank you very much, by faith he dwelt in the land of promise, as in what? Okay, you guys can speak up. I don't know what's normal here, but we don't have to be normal if you're normally quiet. It's okay. By faith he dwelt in the land of promise, as in what? As in a foreign country, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. So I would be thinking, if I'm Abraham, okay, I'm leaving this place. I was born here. I lived here. I've got my business here or whatever. I'm going where God has sent me. It says God would give me an inheritance, a land. It's my inheritance. I'm finally here. I've received my inheritance. And I would tend to think, now I'm going to live like this is my place. But it says, once he gets his inheritance, how does he live? He lives as in a foreign country. He doesn't live like that's his home. It doesn't make sense to me. And so you read verse 10. For he waited for this city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Where was his home? Where did he consider his home? In heaven, right? Yes, in heaven. Heaven was his home. Not where he had come from. Not in Israel, what we know of as Israel now, where he inherited. Neither place was his home. He lived in both places like heaven was his home, which has been a challenge to me, and it's something personally I'm wrestling with, is how do you live like heaven is your home? But I do know a few things. Does everyone want to go to heaven? What would you say? Yeah, everyone wants to go to heaven, not just people that go to church. People that say they don't believe in God. If you ask them, if there's a heaven, would you want to go? Of course they're going to say yes. Everyone wants to go to heaven. Not everyone wants to live like heaven's citizen, which is what I want us to focus on today. Because every different place, like I talked about in India, in Lebanon, has their own culture. Heaven has a culture too, doesn't it? Would you say the earth has a culture? Unfortunately, it's a sin-based culture. Heaven has a pure culture. And God is calling for its citizens, like Abraham chose to live like a citizen of heaven and not a citizen here. And that is what God is calling all believers to live. Not just to want to be in heaven, but to learn what the culture of heaven is today and live it here and now. Does that make sense? And so heaven has a culture. Will we live that culture while we're here on earth? So let's look at something, part of heaven's culture. Matthew chapter 22, verses you know, but we'll just put some well-known verses together for a concept. Matthew chapter 22 and verses 37 to 39. Jesus has been asked, what's the great commandment? Jesus said to him, the person who had asked, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself." Verse 40, on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So what is it that everything that the culture of heaven hangs on? What does it hang on? On what? On love, right? Love to God and love to each other. These are like the foundation principles of heaven's culture. If you're in an Arab culture, the main thing is honor. If you dishonor your family, they might just cut you off. Honor is everything. In heaven's culture, it's not about your own honor. It is about love to God and love to each other. That is the main thing about heaven's culture. In what does heaven's culture value above all others? What is the most valuable commodity, if we're going to, that's maybe not quite the best word to use, but I'm not going to take time to come up with a better one. What is the most valuable commodity in heaven's culture? What is it? Let's consider John 3:16. For God so loved the what? The world. And now is that talking about the planet or the people? It's talking about the people, right? God so loved the world that He gave His own Son, that whoever believes can have everlasting life. The love God had for people led Him to do the ultimate sacrifice. Galatians 2:20. Turn in your Bible there. Galatians 2:20. Galatians chapter 2 and verse 20, it says, "I've been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who what? Who loved me and gave Himself for me." It's about people. And we'll do one more, just a couple pages over, Ephesians chapter 5, verse 25. This is one the ladies like. But husbands, we need to pay attention to it. Husbands, love your wives as Christ also loved the what? The church. The church is made up of people and gave Himself for her. So, what is the most valuable commodity in heaven's culture? What is it? It's love and loving who? People. Love and people. And so let's think this through. When Jesus comes back, because we believe He's coming back soon, amen? We sure hope He's coming back soon. We want to get to a better place. We want to see heaven for ourselves. When Jesus comes back, in 2 Peter, it talks about the earth. What's going to happen to the earth when Jesus comes back? And I wrote it down. 2 Peter 3, we're not going to look at it, but 10 through 13 talks about the elements will melt with fervent heat. So everything here on this earth will melt And those that are in Christ will be, before this happens, will meet Christ in the clouds, right? And then he'll take them to heaven. So, this helps us to realize what heaven values. My 401k, or I have a 403b as a church worker, what's going to happen to that when Jesus comes? What's going to happen to it? Gone. It's worth how much? 0, right? My house, how much is that going to be worth? Nothing. I've owned a few houses. My first one was in Ferguson, Missouri. You've probably heard about Ferguson in the past. It was 816 square feet. I paid $27,300, and I might have paid too much. Okay? My next house, which God led, was 1,400 square feet. Okay? Nicer house. We love that house. That was a great place. And now my current house, because my family has grown, is 2,066 square feet. So when Jesus comes, what's going to be the difference in my 3 houses? The pile of ashes is bigger. Thank you. How did you know? That's what I tell people. That will be the difference. And so we can want something better than we have, but in the end, it's going to be just a different size pile of rubble. It's going to be gone. Whatever you leave in your estate to your kids, and to whatever generation, eventually there's going to be a generation that meets Jesus, and it's going to be worth 0. So what would you think of me if I told you, someone just told me, well, we'll say God told me, because we know he says what's right, that God said that Ford Motor Company is going bankrupt. And so it's going to be worth 0, Ford stock. And I say to you, do you know what? I think it's a pretty good deal right now. It's only such and such a price per stock. I'm thinking of spending $20,000 in Ford stock. In the same conversation, I tell you, God told me it's going to be worth 0 in a year. What would you think? Would you think I'm stupid? You should think I'm stupid. Okay? Because it would be a waste, a total waste for me to do that. And yet, as Christians, sometimes can act like that, investing and putting our money in something that we know is going to be worthless. Do we have to have a house? Yes. I'm not talking about we don't own anything, but that we ourselves need to remember everything other than people will not last when Jesus comes. That only people that follow Christ, even people apart from Christ, they won't last either. I mean, their end comes a little later, their final end. But nothing lasts eternally except people who have come to Jesus Christ. Am I making sense, friends? Am I taking it too far? No? Okay, I think I'm okay. Doesn't matter, I believe it. Okay, I'm glad you believe it too. And so when it comes to, I'm more of a big picture type person. I'm assuming that you believe that tithing is something in the Bible. If you don't, talk to Pastor Mark, okay, or talk to an elder in the church or someone that knows their Bible. They can cover that way. I'm not going to do that in today's sermon. I'm talking about the bigger picture. With this as the bigger picture, nothing lasts except people who have come to Christ. Where should we be spending our time and spending our money? Where should it go? It should only go with what can last, don't you think? Not what's going to be gone. Now, money needs to be spent on a church. For the ministries in the church, they can reach people for Christ. There's some things that may be less direct that impact people for Christ. But there's a lot of things that really don't help. I've got a nice iPhone, an iPhone 10. It's going to burn when Jesus comes. Okay? I could upgrade for an 11. That's going to burn just the same. I have it because my wife lost her phone and it was buy one, get one free. So I said, oh, that's fine. I can handle that. But there's a lot of gadgets. There's a lot of things constantly bombarding us. Go after me. Pay attention to me. Social media and different things that just absorb our time that's just not going to help anybody. It's just going to be wasted. And I do some too. I don't want to guilt anybody, but I want us to think of the perspective and think, how are we using our time and how are we using our money? Could we be investing it better than we're investing it right now? I think that's something for all of us to go home and to consider. I heard a sermon. I don't listen to a lot of sermons, but I heard one from David Ashrick. And in it, I'm not going to get into the whole lead up to it, but in it he described earthly culture as get, heaven's culture as give. And I think that that's an accurate description. Often people are thinking get when God is calling us to give. What did God do? Is God about get, or is God about giving? God is a giving God. That's His culture. That's His culture. And so I hope that we, as we live our days here on earth, don't want to just be in heaven someday, but that we will embrace heaven's culture and live that here and live that now. Because we should be living different, shouldn't we, than the rest of the world? We should stand out. We should be weird. Seriously, this world is so far strayed from God. If we're living heaven's culture, we should be weird. If we're not weird to everybody else who doesn't believe in God, then who's got a problem? We do. We do. Heaven's culture is so foreign. Heaven's culture says, love your enemy. That's not the easiest thing to do, but that's heaven's culture. Jesus said, if they tell you to go 1 mile, say, do you know what? I've gone my mile, but I'm going to give you another one. That's not earthly culture, but that's heaven's culture. Heaven's culture says, if they strike you on the cheek, turn the other one. Don't strike back. Well, we don't strike back, but maybe with our words and what we say about people. There's a lot of things, guys, that I think we don't practice too well. That's heaven's culture. And it's not just, I'm not talking about just time and money, but that's part of it. And if we would truly live by the Sermon on the Mount, our lives would be pretty drastically different from this world if we only did that. Which a few things I just said are from there. To tell you the truth, I've been to cultures that I would have a hard time embracing. In India, they don't use utensils, they eat with their fingers. I don't like that. I would rather not embrace that part of the culture. Okay, and even in heaven's culture, loving your enemies, yeah, you know what? I really don't feel like loving that enemy. Okay, but I want to be your citizen. I want to live like that. Lord, help me. Because really, heaven's culture is impossible for us of ourselves to live. It is so drastically different, and our hearts are bent on to live for an earthly culture. We can't change our heart. But there's a God who can change. So when we have difficulty saying, I know what the culture of heaven is like, I'm struggling, Lord, help me. Help me to live your culture. God will help us. He's made it. He knows it's impossible for us. He knows it's impossible. He knows we have to have His help. And I'm going to end with, it's stewardship, but it's related to the point I just made. I have got a new friend. I needed someone to side my house. I got a bigger house, but I couldn't afford a nice bigger house, so I got one that needed some work. And so I got a guy from the Des Moines Spanish church who does siding. He gave me a good deal, just a super nice guy. When he came to look at the job, look at my house, we got on the subject of stewardship. I don't know how that happened, but we did. I guess maybe my mind goes there whenever I can. And he told me when he first started going to the church and the offering plate went by, he would put in a 5, he would put in a 10, but he told me, 20, too much. He couldn't do it. And his pastor came to him and talked to him about stewardship, talked to him about tithes, talked to him about offerings. And he realized what God was calling him to do was too much. But he wanted to do it. And so he said, Lord, change my heart. Change my heart. And he said last year he gave over $10,000 to the church in tithes and offerings. And he said, I was happy. I was happy. God changed his heart. And God can do that for all of us. If we will just say, Lord, I want to live your culture here. I want to use my time and my money and invest it in the things that matter to you that will last. And your heart is divided on it, God can help you that you'll give, and you'll give with joy of your time and of your money, that you'll give with joy. So I want to ask you, how many of you, well, I'm not going to ask this one. How many of you want to go to heaven? I'm not that stupid. I know all of you want that. But how many of you want to say today, yes, I want to live heaven's culture here. I don't want to wait to get to heaven to start living that culture. If you wait to get to heaven to start living that culture, you're not going to heaven. Okay? I mean, that's just the truth. God is going to take people that are already starting to live heaven's culture. Those are the ones he takes to heaven. It's not the rest. So how many of you want to today say, Lord, I want to live heaven's culture. I want to live it right here. Help me. I struggle sometimes, but help me to live heaven's culture. Yeah, that's what I want. I want to live like a pilgrim. I'm not getting my feet planted on this ground that's just going to burn up and be gone. I'm on a journey myself, saying, Lord, help me to live as a pilgrim. Help me to live for your culture, right here, right now. Well, I don't know what's normal here, and I didn't look ahead at the bulletin. Sorry. So do I end with prayer now, or do we have a song? Song. Okay. Well, let's sing Take My Life and Let It Be. And think through the words. Sometimes we sing songs, and the words come out of our lips, but we never think about them. I picked this song on purpose. Think about the words, and if you really mean it, tell God as you're singing, this is what I mean for my life.